Are meal times a serious struggle? Does your child eat a limited number of foods? Does your child eliminate entire food groups? Are you tired of waiting for them to just grow out of it? Welcome to How to Unpicky Your Picky Eater, where you'll learn strategies to help your picky eater expand their palate. With Christine Yoder, a pediatric feeding specialist, speech pathologist, mom of a child with feeding issues, and author of Mealtime Mindset. Let's get started. Here's Christine.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode. So today I have a topic that I've been wanting to talk about for a while. And it's pretty controversial, I guess. I don't know. I don't think it should be, but I guess it is. They're actually two different topics and how they sort of are a little bit overlapping and relating to one another. So the first one we're going to talk about is the neurodivergent movement. And the second one is the intuitive eating movement and how those interplay, like how they sort of are, connected in some way. And, my thoughts on how they're causing more harm than good. And, why I think there really needs to be a balance. Like, I'm not saying that they're all bad, but I definitely don't see them providing a lot of help and support in like a more positive direction, which I think is the original intent. Like, obviously these terms and movements are, they tend, at least by the people that support and, explain them and support these movements, they obviously feel that it's a positive thing and a good thing. But I'm here to play devil's advocate today, because I think that they need to be relooked at and maybe eliminated. But, that's obviously not up to me. Society will sort of either support it or it'll fade out, right? But let me make my case. So if you've heard, let's start with neurodivergent. Now, if you have heard the term at all, a lot of times you might have heard it being referred to with kids on the autism spectrum. But it's not just relating to autism. It's referring to basically a group of people. This came out of where we used to call, or I don't know, terms change all the time. But when I was in grad school, they would say neurotypical, which is basically like your average person. And then, the non-neurotypical would be, someone who has a disability, essentially, that can be related back to brain development, right? So like the normal brain, the abnormal brain, which I don't think that was a good term either. Neurotypical, like you're typical, but you're not typical. Like that's not good either. So, but this now includes people that have autism, ADHD, dyslexia, Tourette's syndrome. To me, this encompasses pretty much anyone with a syndrome or disability that is related to how their brain interprets or processes information. So I actually did a little bit of research for this podcast, and I found out where it came from. So it was from the 1990s by an autism advocate named Judy Singer and a sociologist, Harvey Bloom, that argued that these neurological differences should be basically, celebrated, that they're not disordered that need to be cured or normalized. So it was a different perspective on it. Like, oh, wait, you're saying autism is a bad thing, but it's actually a good thing, right? And, so there was some problems with this, right? So they were saying like, okay, well, people with autism, we tend to see that, they have some strengths in whatever they had found. I think they said something like finding patterns or puzzles or things like that. But, that's really not what every person with autism, that's not like their strength. It's not like, okay, well, we could say that this person has autism, so we know that they're going to be great at X, Y, and Z. No, there's no two people alike that have autism, right? And honestly, I think that that's sort of my problem with this whole term. I think everyone is neurodivergent, if you're going to explain it that way, that everyone has neurological differences. I don't think, they're sort of saying that, like, I guess, sort of if you give a test, a standard score, like most people in society will fall within this normal range, and people outside of that range might be considered a disability in that area, right? So I think that's where they were going with it. But I think that, you know, e- e- I'm not somebody that would typically be called neurodivergent, right? By any of these classifications that they've created. However, that doesn't mean that on a standardized test that I did really well on math. I was below average, right? So, but I had other strengths. I think everybody has different strengths and weaknesses, and that's how it's supposed to be, right? So I'm not saying like don't celebrate your kids with autism or dyslexia. Obviously, of course, we love them and celebrate them for who they are. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to, you know, what they're saying is that there's no need to cure them or normalize them or make them fit into society because, they're meant to be different and stand out. And to some degree, that's probably right. Not everyone has to fit into like a certain box. But at the same time, why shouldn't we be trying to help people where they have some weaknesses or they want to improve, right? Like, what is the benefit to a person who has dyslexia and can't read? Right? Should we just say, oh, well, they don't need to be cured. Their brain's just different and they're just not going to learn to read? Like, I think we should still help them. So I don't see this as a helpful term. And I don't see it as true because on the autism spectrum, on the dyslexia spectrum, on the, all of these things, people are going to have different, strengths and weaknesses. And, especially when it comes to autism and the kids that I've worked with that are so much more severe, they're it's they don't see those patterns really well, so that doesn't hold up for them. They have trouble with patterns, they have trouble with communicating, and for them we need all of the support to try to make their life as happy and as easy and as functional as possible because whether we like it or not, we're still all on the same planet together. And I think that these movements, the neurodivergent movement and the intuitive eating movement, have basically said that society is the issue, not the person. And to some degree, you can or maybe don't believe that. And of course, society can be hard, right? And part of it might be the issue. But I think the other part of the issue is sometimes there are very real problems that people are having. And there are great solutions and therapies and supplements and things that we can do to make their life better. But my fears here and concerns is that if we shift the focus off of what causing this, why is there an increase in this to, well, why are you even looking at that? Like, you should be celebrating them. You shouldn't be trying to figure out what's wrong or where it came from. But I think there really is something to be said for trying to figure out where it came from, why it's here, what we can do to help, right? I'm a fear that there's going to be a decrease in services for kids. Services are very expensive, and there is a notable, very serious increase in these conditions that our children are having that were not present years ago. And it is a very, very, very expensive bill to pay for all of society. It is because it's increased services in schools. It's increased, cost to insurance companies. It's just an increased cost to everything, right? And I feel like in the future, they're going to use this term to say, oh, well, we don't cover that because they're just neurodivergent. You should be celebrating their differences. They don't need help with that. We don't need to support them with that. That's just how they were born. They were just meant to be different. and almost villainizing you for trying to get them help. So that's a big fear that I have with this movement. Okay. And I feel like the amazing solutions and help that we have available and the knowledge that we have is almost being like vilified. Like, well, how dare you try to cure them, try to help, because what are you saying? That they're not good the way they are? And it makes parents feel bad, it makes providers feel bad who are truly only trying to improve the lives of individuals. Right? And I don't know, I can't speak for everyone, but for me personally, if I'm struggling with something and I find a solution that makes my life easier, that helps me in some way, that maybe helps me learn something even quicker, I'm loving that. Like, I love that. I want help. I seek out help. And sure, there are plenty of people that are like, you know what? I'm good. I don't really need the help. Okay, great. That's fine. But I think it should still be an option. And I think, it should still be, something that's available if you choose to get help for it. And I just really hate, I've seen this on social media, but like parents and providers will sort of single parents out who are trying to help their kids. Making them feel bad. Like, well, don't you love your kid? Like, they were born this way. You should be happy and, just embrace it. And, I've worked with kids who are very, very destructive, and abusive to their family. And trust me, these parents, they loved their kids. They wanted nothing but the best for them. They would do anything, just to keep them at home with them. And some of these kids were very, very aggressive. And, like if there was something that we can do to help that situation, to make that family more cohesive, to, decrease that aggression and the fighting and that's a lot of trauma and stress for a family. And I wouldn't celebrate that at all. Feel free to like hate me for that, but I've seen and worked with those kids and families, and I don't think the kids were happy or the parents were happy. And I think everyone just wanted a solution that, made everybody feel better. And I just don't think that, it's good to look the other way and be like, okay, well, that's just how they are. You should just love them for, you know, you know, destroying your house. And I don't say that lightly. We have had kids that they have absolutely destroyed their homes. They couldn't help. It's not even like they could help it or understood what they were doing. But it's like not like we're not talking about like the whole spectrum of autism. It's not just like the Sheldon Coopers or the Asperger's kids of the world. We're not just talking about them. We're talking about also kids who have no language, right? Or they might have severe seizure disorders. Like there are things, right, that are, I think, need to be cured and addressed. I really just do. So feel free to argue with me on that one, but I don't really, I don't think I could even change my mind on that one. And I'm pretty open-minded, but I don't think I could do that. I think like really what happens is, it becomes like a zero-sum game where if there's gonna be a winner and a loser in this situation. And I don't think that should be it. I'm very solution oriented. I'm always on the side of, well, there's got to be a reason. There's got to be something we could do. We can't just say that there's nothing you could do. There's got to be something, and we will find something, and we're going to make it work to the best of our ability. I'm more of like the positive optimist, and I really want, I'm not saying everyone has to have the same experiences or joys that I have, but, I don't think, let me just give an example. I don't think that when my son had this like very sensory, he was like the sunlight would really bother him, right? So could I have said, oh, I guess his brain's just different. And just, even though he would cry every time he went into the sun, I should just embrace that and I shouldn't try to cure it. I just no, I just don't believe that. For me, I am I was on a mission because I want him to be able to enjoy going outside. I want him to be able to drive a car and not be freaked out when lights are coming in his direction. You know, I want him to have all of the opportunities that I have. He doesn't have to like everything that I do, but I think, I'd be holding him back from having opportunities if I just chalked it up to, well, his brain's just a little bit different. So we're just, he's happy inside and that's where he's going to stay, you know? And had I not done what I had done, I mean, we have improved it. I mean, um, not 100%. It's probably like 95% better. He used to cry when he would come downstairs, and even though all the blinds were closed, like it was pretty bad, right? Now that's not there. Now he enjoys going outside. He doesn't cry when we're in the car and there are bright lights that come at us, right? And I think that that's he seems much happier and so am I. And had I not looked for that cure, that solution, I think he would have missed out. And think that's what I'm really afraid is going to happen to kids and families and providers, that, they're people are going to just keep pushing them and, saying, well, if you don't like them how they are, then, what kind of a monster are you? But I don't think that's being a monster. I think it's wanting the best for your kids. And if you agree, please let me know. If you disagree, you can let me know as well, but there's not really much we're going to do about it. Um, so how is this sort of related to intuitive eating? So intuitive eating is a concept developed by dietitians Evelyn Tribble and Elise Resch in the 1990s, which encourages individuals to reject dieting mentality, cultivate a positive relationship with food and their bodies, and trust their internal cues for hunger, fullness, and satisfaction. It promotes the idea that all foods can be part of a balanced diet when consumed mindfully and without guilt. So it's that last line that bothers me a little bit. That all foods can be part of a balanced diet when consumed mindfully and without guilt. Now that sounds really good in theory. In fact, the whole thing doesn't sound very bad, right? What I'm finding though is that it's been, and I don't know if this was their original intent. I want to say it's not, but I feel like what's like sort of transpired from this is this sort of mentality or movement that says that, if you are telling kids that they can't have this sugar or this candy or this whatever they want to eat, that you are then going to be causing them to have an eating disorder, which I completely reject. And I just don't believe that at all. And I actually looked up things that cause eating disorders. Now, one of them talks about a possibility of having a more unhealthy relationship with food if you constantly are dieting and saying that it's bad and you can't have it, right? I think that there's some wiggle room here, and I think there's some common ground that we can come to when it comes to this food. But the other things are sort of a little bit out of that realm of like, okay, I don't think that's going to cause you to have an eating disorder. So one of them is family history, of course. That's always low neurotransmitter levels, which ironically can come from a poor diet, as well as vitamin deficiencies, right? So that having that good balanced brain, which, if you ever read the book, You Happier, that's a great book about how, the chemicals in your brain can become imbalanced with nutrient deficiencies and, how that impacts, your behavior and, how you see the world, sort of. It's a very interesting book. But anyway, again, can be corrected with proper nutrition or supplements, things like that. Other reasons of that cause psychological factors like trauma, body image, low self-esteem. So these would be like interactions that you might have had with people. Maybe someone, made you feel really badly about yourself when they saw something you were eating and you really internalized that. And, it just led you to have like a really bad experience, right? And you relate it back to that food. And society, right? Social media, regular media, right? For years, we've been talking about how, Photoshop and celebrities and how, they make people look really different than they would look in real life, which, leads to unrealistic expectations for, females and males. Things like fad diets and, constantly being bombarded by ads for this diet pill or this, there's a lot in society that is constantly talking about this. So those are things that cause you to have an eating disorder, right? Not so much just talking about healthy versus unhealthy foods or healthy or unhealthy ingredients. You know, the intuitive eating piece is mostly, I'd say almost all dietitians. That's what I've been seeing online, that almost all, not all dietitians, but I don't really see other professionals talking about it as much, but I do see dietitians talking about it, which surprises me because, you would think that, they're kind of talking about like healthy foods and stuff like that. And I've talked about this a little bit before because this came out around Halloween where I was seeing dietitians telling parents to let kids eat all the candy that they want and not tell them that anything was bad. And I had a real problem with that. And I find that when I ask these dietitians for research that shows that, limiting candy or things like that would cause an eating disorder. And I usually get blocked. So usually they don't want to engage and explain themselves or hear what I have to say. So I don't have much information on that. But, I find it odd that a dietitian, usually you think, okay, these are the people that know about how to be healthy and what foods to eat. So looking to them as the expert, and then having this expert tell you that all food is equal. And that's just not true. I have a real problem with that. And I don't know exactly where it came from, right? But, and I cannot prove this, but my guess would be that the sugar industry is somehow behind this because it just has their name written all over it, right? Take your attention away from, okay, right? If everyone was scrutinizing and had their products under a microscope and questioning what was in it, what are the ingredients, how dare you put this much sugar in a child's food or market this cereal to children when there's no nutritional value, blah, blah, blah. Right. So if that's what society was doing, now you have this group of people who are seen as an authority figure on health and wellness telling you to let your kids eat that. Well, you've just solved that whole problem, right? So I feel like there's like some underlying motives to this. And, it's just not adding up for me. And it doesn't make sense because, you don't have to tell kids you don't have to be like, oh no, if you eat this food, it's poison. Like you don't have to be so extreme about it. But I think healthy boundaries are important. And I think the thought behind the intuitive eating of trusting your internal hunger cues That would work really well if our brains weren't hijacked by the foods that we were eating, because anything that has a natural flavor in it, that is a patented, trademarkable um, thing that belongs to that company, and they do not have to disclose what's in it. And they literally will make food that is highly addictive using different chemicals, and they don't have to tell you what chemicals are in there. So, those foods that have that distinctive taste that you love, like Oreos or Chips Ahoy cookies or Lucky Charms, right? You can taste them on a blind taste test, and they always taste the same. They have a distinguishing taste, and that is the natural flavors and the chemicals that they put in there to keep you coming back for more, right? So that hijacks our brain. So if you were just eating whole foods, you would have these great internal hunger cues and you would know when you're full. But when your brain is hijacked, because sugar will literally hijack your brain and it will keep you craving more and more and more, you're not going to have that same hunger and satiety cues that are normal to the human body when your brain has been hijacked. So I don't see how you can say your body will just know when you've had enough, eat as much as you want, so there's no guilt there. Okay. But how does my body know it's had enough if it's totally hijacked? If my brain is like hopped up on sugar and it doesn't know that I'm full? How are you going to explain that? Not to mention children whose brains are not developed yet, they don't even know when they're tired, right? If we didn't say, hey, it's bedtime, it's time for bed, they'd be playing all night. They'd be up, they'd be upset, they'd be a mess. They can't regulate themselves. That's why they live with us until they're like 18, right? Because they, they, they really can't live on their own yet. They need someone to help them have healthy boundaries, help them, teach them, and create some structure. And to just let them run amok and have whatever they want, whenever they want, as much as they want, I don't see that leading to good outcomes at all. There is already, our country has the sickest children like I think in the whole world, but our health is so far below. I think we're like 46th and like healthiest nations. We should be number one, but we're like one of the sickest. And it's because of the food industry. There's no one stopping them. They've got a lot of money and they put their money in the pockets of the politicians that allow this to continue. And I feel like they've also hijacked the educational system. They donate to universities where dietitians are learning to be dietitians. When you donate a lot of money to a university, you get to dictate some of what is taught there, right? The medical field is notorious for this, right? So, just ask your doctor how much nutritional training and information about what's in vaccines that they have received when they were in school to be a medical doctor. And it's pretty minimal. I bet most doctors today can't name more than 3 ingredients in a vaccine. They've had about an hour of nutritional training, and all of their training is more in what medicine to give for which condition, right? So who do you think was paying, that school? Pharma gave those schools a lot of money, right? So there's always like someone behind these movements. That's how I feel. And I really think if parents start questioning, even just asking the question, if you're ever uncertain, always ask yourself these 3 questions. Is this true? Who stands to profit? and who stands to lose. Because in both of these situations, with the neurodivergent movement and the eat all foods are good movement, intuitive eating movement, I don't see the individual consumer benefiting if they're going to start taking services away, vilifying, marginalizing parents, and pitting people against one another. The kids and adults that are just now allowed to eat whatever they want or be whatever weight they want. Sure, you could be healthy if you're 400 pounds. No, I'm sorry. But you're not healthy if you're 400 pounds. In fact, you're at a serious risk of an awful lot of things if you are 400 pounds. And pretending that that's not a problem and it doesn't exist and vilifying anyone who, disagrees with that, I think there's a problem with that. Anytime you can have an open discussion about something and it has to be either black or white, there's a problem with that. And that goes for me in this conversation too. I'm not saying that absolutely everything I said, that it's the absolute, right? There's always room for discussion. And, I think that's important. It's when discussion is off the table, when you're wrong and I'm right, then that's really where things can go south. So I think in both of these movements, there is definitely some good pieces. And I think maybe even both of them started out well-intentioned. But, I think, that acceptance of who you are as an individual, I think that's really good. I think there was this, kind of push to be more inclusive, which that's always nice. Not that people were totally excluded before with either of these things, but okay, we're going to be a little bit more inclusive. Cool. But, just sort of like blindly like ignoring like where these problems came from to begin with, I think is a huge problem for me. And I think that maybe some of these companies saw these movements or saw the beginnings of these movements and really put their resources into pushing them forward because they saw an opportunity to take their focus, the focus of the people, away from who caused this problem? Why are there so many people with this problem? To moving it over to, if you're asking about this problem, you're part of the problem, right? That's a big shift in focus. And that they are starting to be able to now achieve because they have now people behind them supporting this for them. So I just ask my parents to have an open mind, to always question who's benefiting, who's profiting off of this. And is it you? And always ask yourself, is this true? Like there was like something when I was like reading this, it was like healthy at every weight. Is that true? Can you be healthy at every weight? What about the people on my 600-pound life? That's every weight. That would be 600 pounds. That's included in that. So is that true? Are people who are 600 pounds healthy? No, that's not true. So ask yourself, is it true what they're telling me? Does this make sense in my mind? And who's profiting and who's losing? Usually the average person is the loser and the profiter is some large corporation who has a lot of money and power. That's usually how it goes. So the more people are aware, the more people question and don't just go along with the norm, go along with whatever's happening. There has to be a little bit of pushback and resistance to some of these ideas and movements and policies. Because if there isn't, it's just going to steamroll and it's just going to keep gaining momentum and speed. And like I said, I don't see it benefiting the average person. And I'm the average person. So I don't see it benefiting me or the parents that we serve, right? Right. These are like, you're my people. So I want you to also be healthy and informed. And all that good stuff. So this was sort of like a loaded one today. And it's right, apparently, things just seem to line up so odd sometimes, but apparently I had this like epiphany that I really needed to talk about this on, neurodivergent week, apparently. I didn't even know it was until I started some research and I was like, oh my God, today is the first day of neurodivergent week. I might have to rearrange some things to make sure that this goes out this week. So, I wish you guys luck out there. And, if you agree or disagree, feel free to drop me a line. I'd love to hear your perspective and how maybe one or both of these movements have or hasn't affected you at all. So I will see you next week for another much lighter, less stressful episode where we're going to talk about how to get the nervous system relaxed using the Safe and Sound protocol. So stay tuned, for that next week. The week after. And we will see you very soon.
Thank you for listening to How to Unpicky Your Picky Eater. To learn more about achieving your child's feeding goals, check out Christine's website at foodologyfeeding.com. And be sure to tune in next time to How to Unpicky Your Picky Eater.